She knew that Zelda couldn't bring herself to forgive her mother for being English, which, to be fair, was a sin in the eyes of many Highlanders. But Zelda had also seemed determined to believe the absurd notion that Catriona's mother was a spy, of all things. Once, Catriona had asked her father why Auntie Zelda said her mother was a spy, and he'd given her a strange look. "Some things are better left in the past, aye," he'd said. "You canna believe everything Zelda says, lass." He had not, Catriona had noted, denied it. In spite of the ancient discord between the two women, in the last months of Zelda's life, when she'd been ill more often than she'd felt well, Catriona's mother had come once a week from Balhair to sit with her. The two of them would argue about events that had occurred during their long lives, but they'd laughed too, giggling with one another about secret things. One of the serving women refilled Catriona's wineglass. She drank it like water. With all the Mackenzies crowded into the lodge, there was little room for the games Catriona had planned, and little else to occupy them. Frankly, Catriona had fallen into her cups. No, that wasn't correct. She was swimming in her cups, an idea that made her giggle. "There ought to be dancing," Lottie complained, and shifted uncomfortably under the weight of the bairn she was holding. Another boy. "Something." "What do you mean?" Vivian said. "You cannot dance, Lottie." She nodded to the bairn. Lottie had only recently delivered Carberry. The birth of a second son had Catriona's brother Ole strutting about Balhair like a bloody peacock. "Aye, but you can dance," Lottie said, nudging Vivian. "And I should like to watch." "Me? I'm too old and too fat for it, that I am," Vivian complained, and slumped back in her chair, one hand across her belly. Bearing 4 children had left her with a full figure. "Bernadette will dance." "By myself?" Bernadette, wife of Catriona's brother Rabbi, bent down to stir the logs in the hearth. "Shall I hum the music as well?" "And what of me?" Daisy asked. She was wed to Caline, Catriona's oldest brother. "I'm not too old for a reel." "Or too fat," Lottie agreed. "No, but your husband is too old," Vivian said, and nodded toward Caline. He was seated near a brazier with their father, his legs stretched long. A tankard of ale dangled from 2 fingers. "'Tis a pity that Ivor MacDonald is no here to dance with our cat," Catriona's mother said, and smiled devilishly at her daughter. Catriona's inhibitions had been drowned by the good amount of wine she'd drunk, and she groaned with frustration. "You'll no rest from seeing me properly wed until you meet your demise." "And what is wrong with that, I ask you?" her mother asked sweetly. "Yes, what is wrong with that?" Daisy asked. "Why will you not accept Mr. MacDonald's attentions, Cat?" she asked curiously. "He seems rather nice, and, God knows, he is smitten with you." Ivor was a thick man, the same height as Catriona, with hair that drooped around his face. In the weeks since Zelda had died, he'd offered his condolences so many times she'd lost count. "He may smite all he likes, but I'm far too restless to tie my lot to a shipbuilder," Catriona said imperiously, and drained the rest of the wine from her glass. Actually, his occupation had little to do with it. It was most decidedly his lack of a neck. "I think that's incorrect," Lottie said, looking puzzled as Catriona held her glass up again. "He hasn't smited you, but rather you're the one who's done the smiting, are you know?" Catriona clucked at her. "You know very well what I mean, aye?" "Aye, I know very well," Lottie agreed. "But you're 33, Cat. Sooner or later you must accept that the last sheep at market must take the price offered, or be turned to mutton." "Lottie!" Bernadette gasped. "What a wretched thing to say!" Catriona gave the remark a dismissive flick of her wrist. "Aye, but it's the truth, is it no? I am firmly planted on the bloody shelf of spinsterhood. I've quite accepted I'm to remain without husband or child all my life, aye? That's what Zelda did, and quite by choice. I know what I meant to do. I meant to carry on Auntie Zelda's work. I should like to think you are destined for something other than living at Kishorn, removed from all society," her mother said. "You are not Zelda, after all."